Now, my name is Mona Idrisu, and I work as the head for youth employment and skills here at the Africa Center for Economic Transformation. And today, to help me unpack this question, I'm joined by a practitioner who is not only engaging with this challenge around financing, but is actively building solutions within the industry. I have the pleasure to welcome Mr. Nurideen Mohammed, who is the CEO and co-founder of Northshore Apparel. Nurideen leads one of Ghana's most ambitious industrial and skills development initiatives, a large-scale garment and manufacturing facility in Savelugu, which is in the northern part of Ghana. His facility integrates training directly into production, and his model combines workforce development with job creation, offering a practical example of how skills and industry can align. And I have been following Nurideen's journey over the last couple of years, and he has transitioned from various sectors, including a background in banking industry, and into skills training and providing skills services. So Nurideen, welcome.
Thank you, Mona.
Okay, great. So we're happy to have you here, and our listeners are keen to hear about your experience in building Northshore. But before we go into that, first I'd like to hear about yourself. So what inspired you into TVET? You've had quite a journey starting from non-profit, you've gone into the policy space, you've transitioned into banking, transitioned out of banking, and now a business owner. So I'm curious to hear what has inspired you to go into TVET and skills provision at all.
Mona, thank you so much. Like you rightly mentioned, my journey has been driven largely by providing solutions, be it in the for-profit environment or in the non-profit environment. So if you looked, before I could even get to university, I was already volunteering as a community-based volunteer for Ghana Health Services, and were practically involved in data collections for Ghana Health Services. And after university and after my education, I had a brief stint at the international development arena, because I believe strongly maybe that was an area that I could probably provide value in terms of giving impacting the lives of people. And in banking, my banking was more into development finance, and I've seen how businesses have transformed the lives of people. I was privileged to work with the Robert Goa program in Central and Volta region, and I was also fortunate to help in developing interventions in respect of oil palm development, production development initiative in Central region. And I could see at first hand how, such opportunities were actually changing and transforming lives. So when I moved into Apparel, I realized that that was one of the arena that I had friends who had done the Apparel business in Tanzania and also in Madagascar. So they were interested in doing business here in Ghana, and our path met. So they were looking for finance, and so I sat down to listen to them, and I realized that, gee, this was one area in which we could get a lot of people to work. And I offered to help them to raise funding to do it. But one of the practical things that really hit me was the fact that a lot of the people who were actually looking for a job could not fit into what they were provided, even though that's the kind of people they were looking for. So we had a lot of people who were interested in looking for jobs, but they were not employable. So at that instance, then I realized that there was a gap in terms of all that we've been doing. And at that instant, I needed to make sure that working with the promoters, then how we can be able to bridge that gap and make sure that we get the right skills of people to be able to do the work that we're looking for. So in brief, Mona, That is what it has been. And in the course of doing that work, our promoters were based in the US. So our usual was stay in the office for some time to catch up with them. And then when we finished work and I had to leave, we're right in the Accra Central, Ajabin. I realized that driving out, a lot of our workers, who happens to be migrant workers, a lot of them either would be sleeping in front of the shops, or for some of them would try to come in to take a shower. And when you raise your light, then you realize that, this was a lady who was working at the QA. Then you see that this was completely not unacceptable. It was not just acceptable things to look at. And when it is raining, it was too bad. So I was privileged to do some work with USAID, and we realized that there were so much cotton prospects in the north, and Burkina was also one of the, largest market holders in terms of cotton production in Africa. So I pitched to my board that there was an opportunity for us to establish manufacturing up north and be able to tap into the labor that is available there. And we could use that to hold the migration whilst at the same time looking into how we can vertically integrate. So in short, that's how I managed to transition from the south to the north, because the idea initial was how to get people to work and how to be able to effect the intra-migration using connecting that area into the global supply chain. So that is what we've been doing, and hopefully we'll get it right.
Great, thank you, Nurideen, and that is fascinating. And I think I'll commend you. You have a keen eye for opportunity and just going for it, which isn't always easy. And I like the fact that you have such an inclusivity lens, and not just providing skills, but providing skills and jobs to some of the most marginalized groups of young people that we have. So we will go into the conversation around financing, but just for the sake of our non-Ghanaian audience, if you could just about maybe a minute talk about what Northshore Apparel does.
So Northshore Apparel is actually, I would say, the largest purpose-built apparel manufacturing facility in northern Ghana at present. So we are building a state-of-the-art manufacturing facility on a 50-acre land. And on the first phase, we are looking in the north of almost on a double, or at full capacity, we're looking at 10,000 workers. So we presently at the first phase of training delivery, and we currently have about 2,000 people who are going through pre-hire training just to make sure we equip them with the right skills before we put them to work. And included in these 2,000 people is about 50 deaf and dumb people, because we have a deliberate strategy to make sure that we get a lot of people, especially our physical challenge, to work. And we currently operating with about 50 sewing lines, and we also have state-of-the-art warehouse facility. At completion, we are building a fabric library and a fabric laboratory, and we haven't one of the best state-of-the-art manufacturing equipment, auto-cutters, auto-plotters, print division. And we also have a MOX that, because I always tell people, we also provide free lunch. We have a crèche for our nursing mothers who probably may be disadvantaged because of they don't have a caregiver to attend to their kids while they're at work. And we also have an in-house clinic. And let me stress these things. These are all not just about safety nets or social protection schemes that a for-profit businessman would be interested in. Because you come to think that in apparel, we sell time. We don't only sell products. Every shirt that you make, for example, a t-shirt, there's a standard minute time that is supposed to apply to it. So globally, if it is agreed that you cannot use more than 5 minutes to make a t-shirt, and your team, your facility, you are using 10 minutes to do it, you are losing money. So if you're going to ask 10,000 or 6,000 people to go out and look for food in the middle of Savlugu and come back, you will not be able to get all of them seated at the right time. So you're going to lose a lot of money. If you ask 95% of the population are Muslims, if you ask them on a Friday to go to mosque and come back, you're not going to get them back on time to sit. You are losing money. And if you have a pregnant woman, we provide antenatal and postnatal, and you ask a person to go, they ask for an excuse duty to go to the Savlugu municipal hospital to go and do their antenatal checks. They may probably spend the whole day. If the person was a critical operator for you, you're going to lose money because you will not have the benefit of their skill. So you have to look at some of these things in the context of time and what exactly you are selling. So Northshore is an amazing project. The whole land was a refuse dump. So we reclaimed the land and turned it into an opportunity. We have a zero waste facility system because all our water is wastewater is processed from anaerobic biodigester into gas, which is used to power our boilers. And the residual water returns back as a fertilizer for irrigation for our lawns. We also have a 500 kilowatt power of solar that is actually powering the entire facility. And so far, it's been amazing and it's a wonderful facility. I entreat you to visit after.
Wow, wow. I mean, I knew about Northshore Apparel, but just hearing the layers and the intentionality that has gone into your entire model is fascinating. And hands off to you and the entire team for all the several angles that you've thought of. And this aligns with a lot of the recommendations that we have, particularly around inclusivity and creating the enabling environment, and for business owners to identify or to begin to understand that it does contribute to your bottom line. And in as much as it might be seen as a non-essential, but providing that enabling environment goes a long way to increasing productivity, efficiency, and profitability. So thank you. I'm glad to hear that Northshore Apparel is doing a lot of this. So let's go into financing, because a lot of times for business owners or for those who want to provide skills development services or training, one of the recurrent issues that come up is, how do I find finance? And I have this great idea. I want to do this, but financing constraints become a binding limitation. So from your experience, how have you navigated this?
So my old lady used to say that you should never let lack of financing prevent you from carrying out a good idea. So one of the things that I have noticed is that once you have an idea that, in your view, could actually lead to a greater impact, then you would have to also then put yourself in the position of the one who is likely to give you money and begin to ask yourself, if I was sitting here and somebody comes to me with what I'm actually seeking from people, what are the things that would make me comfortable for me to give my money to the person? If you ask yourself that question, that you may not have an answer for it, but it puts you in a position of responsibility. And you begin to undertake your due diligence in a way that you can make the project oven ready. Because if the project involves, let me take Northshore, for example. The project involves construction, it involves manufacturing, and it involves export. These are 3 layers. So the question is that for you to get somebody to give you money to go into it, then you must first demonstrate to the person that, 1, the business is oven ready. 2, you have the capacity to be able to execute the physical infrastructure if the money is given to you. Nobody wants to give money to build a physical infrastructure of which it will not generate returns, because the physical infrastructure will not pay the money back. So you then have to ask yourself, beyond convincing and demonstrating capacity that I can build the structure, what are the ingredients do I need to put forward to convince a lender or a donor that if the structure is in place, I can be able to make the asset work to pay it back? So your first due diligence is how to make sure that you are able to package the project, which you convince people to be able to put money into the physical structure. The second is also to convince people that you actually have capacity to turn that asset into. And a lot of the time, and in discussing with a lot of people, and it is not an either-or situation, we tend to focus so much on the idea without actually trying to take a 360 view of these things. If I want to build a Northshore, a structure, for example, the first question is that if I'm the lender, what is the ownership situation like in respect of the land that I'm seeking to build a facility on? Who owns the land? Has there been any stakeholder study or examination in respect of the land to assess that there are actually people around the area who do not have any issues in respect of what you are seeking to do? What is the population dynamics around that area in a way that if the structure comes on board, you will be able to get the staff to come in there? What are the environmental concerns? Have I done scoping? Have I done the environmental assessment? So if all these things is done, and then have I done the soil testing? Has there been any hydrological and geological examinations of the land in respect of what they are proposing? What are the architectural drawings? These are things that you need to invest money and time in. And you cannot do it yourself because in my case, I'm just somebody with an idea in Apparel. So you need to be able to open up and get engineers who actually have capacity in areas that can help you. You need to bring your finance team to make sure that all the idea is costed and properly accounted for so that people who are putting money in it, they are able to relate in terms of where that money is. And do you have capacity to report in terms of the spending that you are doing so that the one who is giving the money knows that you can actually account for the money that they are giving to you? And for me, these are some of the things that we need to focus more on. And the rest in terms of the financing, there's a lot of money available, but in terms of the approach and attitude in terms of how we package the ideas is usually what is making it very difficult for financing funders to at least align themselves with.
Nurideen, I feel like you're just giving us a master class on finance, and I could sit and listen to this one. I've learned so much in just this one question because you have touched on capacity, and I think that is one aspect that is mostly missing, right? Because we're looking at the idea, we're looking at what we could potentially achieve, but we forget about ensuring that indeed, should you get this financing, or if there are investors ready to come on board, can you demonstrate that you do have the capacity to undertake or to execute the idea that you're pitching? So I think this is a very valuable lesson. And I should say that I think that your background in banking and financing has really also contributed to your perspective on this. And I'm hoping that our listeners are taking some very good notes on attracting financing, but also maintaining and turning around that investment. Now, I want to move on to the scale level, right? So, as an industry player, if you look at it at a system level for TVET, most of our funding goes into into inputs, right? So, particularly if you look at TVIs or publicly funded TVET institutes, a lot of the funding is based on inputs. I dare say that hasn't worked, but let me know in your thoughts whether this financing tied to inputs rather than outcome works, and whether it works or it doesn't, or why does this model fail? to deliver what we're looking for?
So for me, I will not, that's why I'm saying that. I think we need to take a cue from solutions globally that has worked. Because if we are doing something over and over and over and it's not fitting, we tend to ask ourselves what exactly is happening. And for me, the core message in all these things is the fact that the input model that we are actually currently implementing, for example, kind of try to pitch TVET as if it's a social cost, rather than probably looking at it more as a bankable asset. Because in my case is that if you are providing skills training for somebody, there should be some level of measurable returns, of which, even if I want to send my kid to a TVET school, a lot of us, when we're growing up, we pick courses based on how individuals in our society have performed well in their careers. And we say that, oh, I have a neighbor who is a banker or who is an accountant. So my goal is that when I grow up, I also want to do accounting so that I can also have a better life. So if you have graduates, for example, who are coming from TVET institutions and their lives are turning out better, obviously those children or the youth would be very much attracted into going into a TVET system because they can be able to measure the impact of whatever skills they are gaining for themselves. And let me give you, what do I call it? Let me come to, what do I call it? This scenario. When you finance a factory, you expect a return, be it social and financial. The same way, if I finance a TVET institution, I expect to be able to measure some level of employability, some level of weight gain, and some level of productivity relative to employers and the institution. So if we, in Northshore, for example, the approach that we are all adopting is obviously based on that model of the outcome base. Because the issue is that you are putting, for example, as an investor, if I'm spending I'm spending money currently, putting people into various forms of pre-hire training, I'm very clear in my mind that at the end of month 4, because the progress of each trainee is measured, what exactly they are going to fit in is known. So I'm able to say that 300 of these trainees are trained on how to operate a basic T-shirt. And at the end of the day, I expect their efficiency to be at this number. And this would translate into a permanent employment. And this is the wage scenario for people who are actually running a T-shirt, people who are running a T-shirt operation. So for me, the outcome-based model that you refer to would greatly assess both the policymakers and even we, those who are in the industry, to be able to make sure that we aligned the investment with a very proper outcome. A lot of the people, for example, who showed up have gone through vocational training institutions and have shown up at Northshore and looking for a job in the areas that they themselves have been able to acquire education from. Those who have not been to TVET institutions, their learning is much more even better because they don't even come with a preconceived understanding of how it was done. They are coming with a blank slate. So the instructors are able to put them on the machines and just be able to direct them the way. But those who came from the TVET institutions, and we run the TVET institutions as if it is like a grammar school. You show up in the morning, you go, but that's not the essence of skills training. That's not the essence of it. So at the end of the day, you realize that those who have never had education at all, who have never been to school, nor those who have never been to TVET, you realize that their efficiency tends to be progressing much, much faster. Because what those who went to the TVET institutions, it was more, even if it is practical, the machines they were exposed to is completely different from what exactly is in front of them now. And you would now have to unlearn some of the things that they learn at the TVET institutions and to learn the new one that is actually in a position to give them job. And for me, if there was supposed to be a greater alignment, which we are seeking to do with the Bopar Training Technical Institute, then we'll be able to know that, like, we'll be able to come out with a TVET program that would be able to align properly with what industry needs, and they too will be able to account for the real impact outcome of the skills that they are providing to the people. In my case, for example, we are providing the pre-hire training to 2,000 people, and we are supposed to account permanent employment for the entire 2,000 people. Majority of these people have never been to school. So they've acquired a skill which they can use beyond our gaze. And if they so decide to even migrate, they will migrate with the skill of which they can fit into any apparel facility at all in the world, because the operations that they have learned is the same operations they will meet in Kenya, they will meet in Tanzania, they will meet in Mauritius, they will meet in Bangladesh. So for me, if we can transition into an outcome-based model, that would be very, like, that it will serve the cause greatly than what we are currently doing.
Great, Nurideen. I like the phrase that, I like what you said around, we need to be looking at TVET as a bankable asset, because I think that really shifts the mindset around, because, you know, education is a public good, but also identifying the greater alignment between skills in TVET provision and industry, and beginning to look at that as a bankable asset and tying financing to outcomes, right? And I think for research institutions like ours, rethinking or thinking about research in terms of outcomes of TVIs that we interact with. How many graduates are being employed? We have tracer studies that are looking at the outcomes of graduates from the various TVET, and that could go a long way into even improving the perceptions that we hold around graduate outcomes or employability outcomes for TVET graduates. Right, so just to give us a bit of a break, we're going to go into a video that, again, just highlights the importance of TVET and some of the findings we have had from our recently published report on building TVET system for economic transformation. After the video, we'll come back with more questions for Nurideen. So just a brief pause here for a video.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, so whilst the video is loading,
So before I came to DTI, I attended ATU, Accra Technical University, and I studied building and construction. So comparing that to DTI, I think there's a vast difference in the practicality. Because in DTI, when you are being given something to world, you are being left, after being guided, you are being left alone, and then you do it, and the supervisors come to check it.
Our Ghanaians, we don't really pay much to details, and also we don't follow standards. So I can say TVET is helping to develop students with that necessary skills and also follow duties and also standard. With DTI, we are embarking on initiating precision quality among the students, which help them to be able to work and also give quality works within industries.
After you are being taught how to weld and everything, you are being added with a vital soft skill, It could be communication or any other skill. And this one will help you or adapt to your value. Oftentimes when maybe you are looking for a job opportunity or anything, the certification you are holding, a lot of people are holding it. But what sets you apart or what makes you different is the soft skill that you have. And DTI impacts that on you.
Most ladies are into a white-collar job. They are afraid of their technical skills, but I think TVET is the best. Not even I think, I know that TVET is the best because you get to gain skills so that you can also practice on your own.
TVET has added value to my hand, and I would say TVET will help my peers to exploit their talents.
TVET has played a vital role in my life in the sense that it has given me a hands-on skill. Everything we do here is in a practical way, and you learn them yourself, and nobody helps you. So anything you learn here is confidential. You know that you can't do it without anybody's help once you are being taught.
So now the world, we are moving on, we are moving forward. More constructions, more buildings. So definitely they will need all this. So I think I'm going to get a job.
I will encourage my peers to try and add values to their hand because TVET is really dominating the world.
Super.
Great. And that was a video showcasing some of the young people we work with at Asset in terms of you hearing from firsthand from students of TVET and how they think about TVET progressing and the way that we can innovate in the TVET space so that we're not seeing TVET as what it used to be. The perception we have of TVET from back then is quite different now, and we're innovating. So for those who have just joined us, I have here with me Nurideen Mohammed, who is here with us today to talk about financing around TVET, linking to his work with Northshore Apparel. So Nurideen, let's go back to our discussion. So another thing or another issue that often comes up is around how do business owners, industry, right? How do we balance the skills training with your bottom line? Often at times you interact with business owners and they say, we don't have time, we don't have the money, we don't have that to train. We're business people and we need to get moving. Our balance sheets is what matters. So, but you do it, you've successfully done it. You're providing skills, but you're a business. So can you share insights on how has that worked for you?
So my response would be that I share with the concern of my colleagues. It is really very difficult, and that is not something that what do I call it? We set out to do. And I always mention that we are not a training institution. We are a business that is set out to make apparel for export. However, we are also not oblivious to our circumstances. And it is not an either-or situation. It is something that must be done. Because not doing it would be more costly and it would impact your bottom line more than what you would if you do it. Because one of the things that I see is that, let me give you a practical example. If I go to a bank and raise an LC to bring in raw fabric to make t-shirt, and I expect that I need to make 100 t-shirts. If I don't train the workers to be able to produce the t-shirts to sew accurately, and I expose them to the fabric and the fabric is spoiled, how am I able to pay the LC back? Because the reject rate is likely to be very high. And for that matter, if I spend money and train them to be more efficient, they will not only be giving me quality garments, they will also be doing it at the right time that it's supposed to do. So eventually, if you looked at it from a very holistic point of view, then you realize that it actually saves more money if you can find it to retool the team before you deploy them into operation. Because the challenge is also that, which I said I agree with them to some extent, is that all the money that you are spending on the workers, preparing them to make them ready, is a sunk cost to you. it is not money that you can get back. And no bank would give you money to be able to train workers before you employ them. Banks gives you money either to build a physical infrastructure or to be able to serve as a working capital. Training of workers in the view of the finance industry is a function of the state. If you establish a business, nobody set up a bank and have to teach people banking before they employ them.
Right.
But in our TVET, the state also needs to understand that there's a significant portion of the population who are willing to work, but they are not employable. They don't have the tools to work. And for that matter, it will require some kind of a collective collaboration to prepare the young people rightly before we deploy them. So for me, providing training for what we are currently doing is a must, because if we don't do it, we too will not exist as a business unless we want to flood the place with expatriates. And that would be very costly to do, to provide work with the locals could either should be doing. Or you bring automated machines to do the work other people are supposed, like individuals or real human beings should be doing. So it's difficult, but it requires a balance, and it requires a collaboration in a way that we can do it and do it more effectively, which it can be mutually beneficial.
Good. So, Nurideen, just on that point on collaboration, right? What role should government play in de-risking private investment when it comes to skills development? And what incentives can policy reforms, or what incentives can policy offer to make this viable for firms to invest in training systems?
So I think government has it works pretty cut out for it. So, for example, I was having a conversation last week with somebody who visited our facility. And I was telling the individual that, you see, one of the ways government can approach some of these things instead of throwing money at the problem is that you will say that if a private person is looking forward, and the Germans is currently doing something similar, even though if a private person like we are doing can upfront the investment, a training investment of, let's say, 1,000 people, and guarantees that at the end of the training, that the 1,000 people are actually transitioning to permanent employment, the government can come back and provide either a refund or an incentive for what is done. For example, what we are currently doing, for some of them that you have transitioned into permanent employment, even before they start making money, you are supposed to be paying income tax on them, PAYE. So here is the key: is all the training impulse that you are spending on trying to provide the skills for the people before you employ them, which the state should have done. You are paying taxes and you are paying to the government for doing the work government should have done. And what government also needs to understand is that these individuals have the training. In our case, we are an export firm. Government can at least directly see what impact it will have on them. If I take the 1,000 people, we give a questionnaire before we enroll. And I'm telling you that says 90% of the respondents said that they have never been on sustained income for the last 1 year. Sustained income defined as working Monday to Friday without a break. 90% said they have never been on sustained income for 2 weeks. And a lot of them, I'll say over 80 of them, said that they have never, like, their level of education truncated at SS level. So these are individuals after the training who would be permanently employed. They will pay income tax to the state. They will make products which is going to be shipped out. Government would benefit from their labor because foreign exchange will come in as a result of their work. They will have direct contribution to GDP. Now they are contributing social security to the government. And these are individuals who would affect, if a young woman is collecting consistently an income, why would that young woman require government to subsidize fertilizer for them if they are actually peasant farmers? Because how much is a bag of fertilizer? How much it costs? Like 150 maximum for an acre of land. A number of them who are currently at our place are able to pay for their own tractor services to do their 2 acres, 3 acres, and they are able to buy their fertilizer. So I'm saying that government can see real impact of converting a non-functioning sector of the society to a functioning sector. So instead of relying on collecting money from areas which government could have invested back, government can at least use the power of the state to say that if you can train X number of people, then we'll give you an income tax waiver of X number of this and for this number of period. Businesses would not be telling you that it is expensive for them to invest, because if you invest in 5 people and you demonstrate that those 5 people have been given jobs and they are now in gainful employment, and government says that because of that, I've given you 6 months or 3 months tax waiver, income tax waiver, PUI waiver on those individuals, obviously you will plow the money back to invest in the people. Right. Or government says that 1,000 people, you employ them. Okay, government says that I'll take 50% of the cost back so that you can reinvest it back. So these are some of the things. It's not difficult.
Right. And these are very practical, concrete recommendations you've given us. So for the policymakers in our audience and tuning in via live stream, I hope that you're taking notes, because a lot of this, as Nurideen has demonstrated, there's cascading effects throughout the economy with some of these policy reforms that can open up investment opportunities and giving back to communities, especially some of the most disadvantaged communities, and how that goes on to improve livelihoods for workers and for those who are employed in some of these firms. So Nurideen, unfortunately, I still have a long list of questions I wanted to ask you, but I'm keeping an eye on time, and I'm aware that I'm running out of time. So I'll just ask my final question before I go into the Q&A. And this time I want us to look at things at the system level, right? Your model works. You have shown a model that works at the firm level. What would it take to scale similar models across the country? And even for our listeners from outside of Ghana who want to emulate this, how can we scale this model? And what would be that one priority reform recommendation to policymakers across Africa?
So what I was, Muna, so to make it brief, because you don't, so what I will just tell government is that we are not reinventing the wheel. Government can adopt a bit of the model of the German apprenticeship model, because we also take a cue from that. You get a point. And if we are able to do that, at least we will be able to scale things. We can be able to scale what we are doing currently. There's absolutely, nothing new in what we are doing right now. There are models which is currently working, and government can adopt some of these models, like I did mention of the the German apprenticeship model, which we take some, some of the features into what we are currently doing. And one of the other areas that government can also look at in terms of scaling things up is that we need to be able to look at industry to industrial level in terms of how this investment can be done. So if we take oil and gas, for example, players within the industry can come together and say that we are contributing 12% of our payroll into a fund, and that fund can be used for the purpose of building, support selected TVET institution, providing industry-specific training that they can at least be given the first right of refusal in terms of taking it from them. Apparel manufacturers, we can come together and say that, Nurideen, Northshore doesn't want to be involved in doing trading. Northshore just want to focus on making t-shirts. And as a consequence of that, we are ready to contribute 15% of our payroll, and other like-minded apparel industries would contribute this. We put it into a fund and then make sure that the selected TVET institutions are providing industry, specific beneficial training for our sector, and that we can at least benefit from from the pool of resources that has been created. So that is at our level, and at the state level, government can also start to use its tools to augment some of these things to make sure that they direct the investment for all of us.
Right, Nurideen, I think that even though I've heard about skills funds, but this is usually at the government level. So it's refreshing to hear you pitch this idea of a skills fund that is sector focused, and investors, or let's say industry or business owners who contribute to this fund can directly see the output or the outcomes and the benefits of contributing to this fund. So I really like that idea. Thank you, Nurideen. So I don't want to take up all the space and time that we have today. I will be inviting questions. We do have a Q&A function, so feel free to use it. I see a hand up, so let me call Wilhelmina Abba Moses. Wilhelmina, if you can unmute. Yes. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. So I'd want to ask Mr. Nurideen that how can government ensure that funding from TVET is tied to real job outcomes rather than just training more people into the workspace? Thank you.
Okay, so before I let Nurideen come in to take that, I'll take one more question so that he can answer it at a go, and then I will read some additional ones from the chat. I see questions coming in. For questions, Raphael, can you hear me? If you can hear me, you can unmute to ask your question. Okay, so
okay. Thank you so much.
Okay.
And thank you so much, Mr. Nurideen, for the presentation, and that's for the conversation. My question is in relation to the aspect where you highlighted digital and industrial convergence. So I know Norshore's partnership with Codes Digital reflects a shift toward digitized production. However, most public TVET curricula across Africa lag significantly behind. My question typically is, what policy mechanism should governments use to mandate or incentivize real-time curriculum updates driven by this industry technology adoption? Thank you very much.
Great. We have some very interesting questions. I'll pause here, let Nurideen take it. So just to summarize, Nurideen, I think the first question we had from Wilhelmina was around this tying financing to outcomes. I think this has become a very critical area where everyone wants to see results, including students, because students who go into TVET are also investing their time. And so outcome-based financing, it benefits everyone. And the second question from Raphael is around digitalization. How do we ensure that curriculums in TVET are catching up to the pace at which industry is moving, especially in this digitalized world?
So what I would say is that I'm glad that he reference to the investment that we are doing with Coast Digital. And like I said earlier, you cannot be able to compete effectively globally without actually adopting the same measures that your peers are doing or doing better than what they are doing. And there's absolutely how do I put it? Well, to answer your question directly, without these things, to answer your question directly is that the current arrangement of the workplace learning, government curriculum needs to rather put it more at the center, because some of these investments are very expensive. And it will be very difficult for and unreasonable to expect a TVET institution to evolve regularly in respect of some of these investments, because the technology do change and some of the machineries. And for me, in the industry I am, fashion is always evolving. So the best way for the curriculum to be able to mitigate this is to make sure that the alignment with the industry, the workplace learning, is rather emphasized more. Because one of the things that it helps the TVET institutions to be properly aligned and be updated, and it also saves them money, because some of these machinery and equipment in the facility, we've already procured them. So the learners would have the opportunity to be exposed to them, and when they eventually happens to pick employment within the industry, a lot of these things are not alien to them. You mentioned GSD Coast, one of the suite that we bought from the Coast Digital. That is what is used to be able to do costing in terms of calculating the number of minutes that is required. And you cannot compete effectively and in the industry if you cannot be able to calculate the time series that is required to make a garment. These are, there's zero, as at the time we're actually making the purchase, there's zero practitioner of GSD in Ghana, no licensed practitioner. And yet we actually posted of doing apparel for, for God knows the number of years. But you cannot effectively compete in an apparel industry without the help of GSD Coast. So the learners at the TVET institutions, for example, if they happens to be doing workplace learning as part of their curriculum, they would have the benefit of experimenting and working with the GSD course, and it makes their licensing much more easier in case by the time they will even leave the school can incorporate it and make sure that if you want to be an industrial engineer as your course, make sure that by the time we leave as part of our, we would make sure that our students would be licensed. They will sit for the exam and be licensed, and when they come out, then we can say that they are actually globally recognized industrial engineers. So we can look at it that way. You don't need to do anything new. They just need to continue with what they are doing with workplace learning by making sure that it is more practical.
Right. Great, Nurideen. I have, I'll take two more questions from the Q&A that we have so far. So we have Alfonso. Alfonso is asking what the impact of Northshore Apparel has been in terms of influencing TVET financing policies in Ghana, and whether policymakers are aware. Are you getting the audience that, you know, Northshore should get in terms of engaging at the policy level? And the second one we have is from Ray, and Ray wants to know how, as technical consultants in TVET space, how they can ensure to integrate performance-based financing into TVET projects.
Yes, so that's also, it always is a question that I always ask. You know, if you set out to, like, the first question we should always ask ourselves, well, in everything we do, is that what is it that we want? Because if you are financing TVET or you are championing TVET, you should have the outcome in mind. What is it that we want? If our goal is just to attract funding and pretend to provide training for people and release them into the market, knowing very well that it cannot significantly do something for them, then obviously that is what we'll pretend to be doing. If our goal is to train people and put them to work, then we must at least develop mechanisms such that after the training, we can measure how many of them are actually working. So the outcome should, for me, should always be our starting point. What is it that we want? isn't just to provide skills for people and says that we'll provide skills for people, which if our intention, our goal is to make sure that we provide skills for people and the people are going to get permanent employment, then we must at least begin to engage placement centers and knows that what kind of training should we give to the people, and right after the training, the people would be placed. And you do it together with the employers who would be benefiting from the skills of those individuals. So I'm just giving a general answer to you, because I cannot provide a specific answer.
Absolutely. And I think if you can quickly take the question on the reception you've had from policymakers.
Oh, for policymakers, it's a work in progress. At least we are having a conversation. We started a conversation with ECET, and it's an ongoing thing. So hopefully we will get there.
Okay. Fantastic. Unfortunately, we're down to 3 minutes on the clock, and so I should be wrapping up. And for me, this has been yet another very engaging conversation. I enjoy these series because we're not just talking about abstract concepts in these conversations. We're talking to people who have really innovated on the ground and are showing working, as we informally say. So these are groundbreaking practitioners and TVETs who can demonstrate that some of these models work. So I hope that our viewers and our listeners have equally enjoyed this. Nurideen is available on LinkedIn. If you have any more questions, you can interact with Nurideen. Nurideen, thank you so much for your time today. And I have certainly learned a lot, particularly around thinking about TVET as a bankable asset. I think that's really what I am leaving with, and not just as we do for typical grammar education. And this idea also around a fund that industry players, sector-focused funds, so not just generally a government fund, but sector-focused funds that industry or private sector business owners can contribute to in funding skills development in that specific sector and get to have first dibs on graduates from that sector. So thank you very much. And to our listeners, this is part of our YES-PACT Fireside Chat edition. This has been the second episode. We will have one next month. And this time we will be hosting the Jewelry and Gemstone Association of Africa. We'll be joined by the founder, and you will get to hear also from another industry innovator in the jewelry and gemstone section. So we hope you do make the time to join us. Thank you all once again. Thank you for joining us. And to the team at Asset, I'm forever thankful for the work you put in the background to making sure that everything runs smoothly. Thank you once again, and everyone have a wonderful day wherever you're joining us from.
Thank you.
Each year, 10 to 12 million young Africans enter the workforce. The opportunity is huge if the skills match the jobs. Too many TVET systems are under-resourced and out of date. In Ghana, only 1.9% of the education budget went to TVET in 2022, far below a 20% benchmark. In Rwanda, 93% of students say they still train with obsolete equipment. In Uganda, 72% of teachers cite weak digital infrastructure. The result? Skills that don't translate into real jobs. When TVET aligns with industry, outcomes jump. In Rwanda, nearly 7 in 10 graduates secure work within a year. In Ghana, nearly 70% of TVET graduates are employed, many through stronger business linkages. So here's what works. 1, finance what matters. Raise TVET funding towards 10 to 20% of education budgets. 2, teach for the future. Bake digital and green skills into every program. 3, include everyone. Remove barriers for women and vulnerable groups. We're talking scholarships, safe housing, accessible features, and inclusive pedagogy. 4, follow the data. build labor market information systems, do tracer studies, and update curriculum with real-time labor demand. Finally, let's value informal skills. Recognize apprenticeships through recognition of prior learning and create pathways to certification. Africa's youth are ready. Modernize TVET, match training to jobs, and transform potential into prosperity.